Hi, this is Karl Davidson, and I am a Matrix Reimprinting trainer and an EFT trainer and practitioner. And here, as you can see, is Karl Dawson, who is the creator of Matrix Reimprinting and also one of Gary Craig's founding masters. And he had this lovely idea of doing a series of free talks to update Matrix and to clarify some things. And I know, since I've been doing this since before it was even called Matrix, that really good idea. So I'm really glad that we're doing this, Karl, and why now?
Hi, Karen. Great to be with you, and thank you for volunteering for this. I do think it is time. I think it's important. I think I've got to a point with Matrix Reimprinting now that we've kind of evolved but yet simplified some of the ideas. And a few people over the last months, maybe a year, have been coming back to repeat Matrix. Maybe people that have not done Matrix for 4 or 5 years. And or even people who've done it a year ago and said, wow, it's so different.
It is different.
And I equate it to when you have a small child, when you're with a child every day, you don't see it growing. But if you don't see a child for 6 months, then you suddenly see, wow, it's grown, it's
You're
changed.
different.
Yeah, it's all different now. So I thought, yeah, it's about time. So I just want to put some talks together with you on some, part of it's refreshing, updating some key areas within Matrix. And then some of our talks are going to be about the advancements we've had, some of our new ideas, things like the future imprinting and how we're using that to change morphic fields. What else have we got? Things like the one belief idea, which to me is going to be a huge understanding within Matrix.
Yeah.
What I'm playing at the moment, the key event, where as we go through life and we have that initial belief from pre-6 and childhood and in the womb, that at some stage, this event goes and it just explodes into a lot of sub-beliefs. But just finding these events can be absolutely key, but also realising how much work there is to do with them once you find them.
Hence a series of talks and not just one, right?
Absolutely. This is going to be the first, and we're picking this topic because it's one of the most contentious in Matrix.
This is the topic that's very important to us over here in America, and it's the whole issue of what you can and can't change, what's denial, how far you can go, what you shouldn't do, and even with us trainers, we're sort of like trying different things and seeing, based on not only our experience but what licensed professionals do, and we're all doing, and I'd rather hear it from the creator himself, and with all the what you've told me is you think about this 24/7. So
Absolutely.
and so this, you picked a big one to start with, Karl, but I think it's brilliant. So
I think it's the most important, and it's, I'm getting reports from around the world of just some problems that practitioners run into, the people not really understanding what we're trying to achieve and do here, and the whole idea of completion of events as compared to denial of an event, and that's really what I want to go into. It kind of, on one level, it's quite simple, but also it depends what we're going to be working with. And I think, whether we're working with a big T trauma or a phobia or small T traumas or beliefs, or, in each different situation, we need to really just adjust the way we work with this completion of the memory. So that's what I want to get into.
Do you want to jump into that, or is there some things you want to do first of all, why we work the way we do in the Matrix, or background at all, or is there anything that you want to bring up before?
Yeah, I think it'd be good to just get just back to the basics of Matrix. Why Matrix? Why we work like we do in Matrix is how it differs to EFT. And so just like my most recent understanding, the way I explain it is EFT. You've heard me say this, and I think it amuses you that I see EFT as actually surrogate work. That in reality, in that moment of trauma, when we freeze, when we can't fight, we can't escape, and we freeze, and that part of ourselves just splits off into our subconscious fields, and we hold that memory and all of its meaning. That's what we're working on with trauma. Now, EFT, I see it that when we look back at these memories, either because some nasty little practitioner like ourselves forces people to look back at these memories, or some life event trigger these memories back in, that people re-experience the same feelings. So, and we see it's the meridians are the pathways through which these emotions come back into the organs. The same information, exactly the same information of what you went through when you were traumatized. And I don't know if you've heard me say this, Karen, but I think you might like this idea that, yes, there's an element of protection here, that by feeling these things again, it's like saying, oh, this is potentially a dangerous situation. But also I think there's an element of, well, last time when I was younger and this happened, this is what my body did, this is what my kidneys did, and this is what my stomach did, and this is what my lungs did, and my heart. And if we do the same again, as in repeat the same pattern, then maybe we'll get through it again.
Absolutely. This is what kept me safe. This was my sort of coping skill. This worked. Let's do it again, because I don't know any other way.
Absolutely, but of course, as we know, a lot of these strategies are pretty, not the best way.
You're not 3 anymore. Right?
Yeah,
So,
they're not appropriate anymore.
right.
A lot of these events, you go back to very early childhood, and that's all we could do back then, as you said,
Exactly.
to survive. But no, we've got better ways. So that's the understanding. Stuck in that moment. And subconsciously, yes, we're still stuck there. Consciously, we've moved on, we survived, we did survive. I mean, obviously, we're still here. But the subconscious is locked in that moment, still about to die. So that's what we're dealing with matrix reimprinting, is letting the echo move through that trauma. Another thing I've found, I don't know if you've come across this, I know you've obviously been training EFT and matrix for quite a few years, that as well as teaching new people who've just learned EFT with me and then go on to do matrix, but I'm also worked with lots of very experienced EFTers. They might have trained with me many years ago, or with other trainers. And I said, go back to your key events, those that you worked with EFT all those years ago. And I find it amazing when people go back into these memories, how much trauma the echo is still holding, and also, then beliefs of the echo is still there. It's just, when we look at the memory, and you've got this brilliant metaphor for this difference between EFT and matrix. I'd actually like you to share that now, because I've been using that ever since you came up with this years ago. But the fact that a lot of these EFT memories, yes, we're kind of further dissociated from it when we look at the memories.
Carl, I'm going to just interrupt 1 minute there, because I think that's that's the big difference in between EFT and why EFT helps. But that EFT is a dissociative tool, so it dissociates you from the feelings, and so it just becomes a past event. But that's all it does, it just dissociates you. It doesn't solve the problem unless you have higher EFT skills and you go into all kinds of other things and
things like reframing and such.
Right. So if you just tap, you're just dissociating yourself from the feeling, and that's to me. And I'm an EFT trainer. That's not the whole story, That's you don't just. It's great. Like my husband Scott, he's like, hey, if I don't feel it, I'm good. But that's not, to me, the completion. You're not getting rid of the problem. You're just not. You're not caring about it anymore, and that's what's inherent in the matrix reimprinting process, is to solve that.
Absolutely, and something that's excites me. Obviously, the new book came out last year, and the whole title, that transform your belief, transform your life. Whilst we always worked, we did in the first book 6-7 years ago, we looked at beliefs, but now there's a whole bigger focus on beliefs. It's basically, I'll go through the simple protocol of what we're doing with Matrix and how we go in there and work with the client. But basically, it's in there, tap, what is the belief decision made that day, and that's what we work on. And that's what really matters. We can get rid of the trauma through the tapping and through moving the echo through that moment and releasing that freeze. As Dr. Bob Scare says, you don't necessarily have to go through the experience of shaking and re-experiencing it physically to release the trauma. If in your subconscious procedural memory that you see that you move through that trauma, it has the same effect of releasing the trauma. And that's what we're doing. And it's, as he said, with somatic experiencing kind of techniques and therapies,
People do
Um,
sometimes shake, and he's right, and sometimes they don't need to, like you're saying. And this is the kind of stuff you learn on the course, when you take the
mm,
2-day course.
absolutely. But what they do within these techniques is actually to almost bring it back into the body so they can release that freeze response, which they didn't do at the time. But,
Exactly.
as he said, I mean, you was there, you filmed him that day at Carol Look in Denver. What was it, 5, 6 years ago? Um,
Yeah.
yeah, that you've got to be very skilled as a practitioner, and it takes a long time to bring all this stuff back into the body and shake and release it
Safely.
that
Yeah.
way
Uh-huh.
and complete it in that way. So you don't need to do it if you can do it subconsciously and just you see yourself that you've moved through the trauma,
Okay. Yeah.
and that's what you now see when you look back at these memories, that the events completed and you did survive.
Exactly.
Then the trauma's
Yeah, I
released.
have my favorite story is very short. It's like I almost drowned. In all her life, she almost drowned. After Matrix, I survived. I could swim.
Yeah.
And so it's just a entirely different perception on the event, and that's changing the belief.
Yeah, well, I'm going to use quite a few cases, and I'll give you one now on this. There was a lady I worked with quite a few years ago, and I'll try and keep the case as brief as possible. Basically, this was her son 15 years ago, Friday night, he went out with his friends. Now, it was back before we had mobiles or cell phones, as you call them. Is it cell phone?
Yeah, cell phones.
Cell phone over there. And pubs used to close in the UK at 11 o'clock. You had till 25 past 11. Then they would kick you out, whether you finished drink or not. So, we'd be home at 11:45.
Right.
So this lady, I'm looking through with this memory, and the memory's called The Day My Son Died. Gets to 11:45, that Friday night, 15 years or so ago, son's not come home. She starts to get a bit worried, so she phones the friend's landline, and she speaks to them, and they say, "Oh, we've not seen him for hours. We've all back home, and we can't remember. Don't know where he's gone." So anyway, now she's really worried, and then she turns on the radio, and she hears that a local boy has been drowned in the river. This is a city in England called Worcester, and it's on a river called River Severn. And in that moment, when she hears about this boy drowning, she knows her son has died. So she knows she's phoning the hospitals and she's phoning the police and trying to find out where they've taken his body. And as she's on the phone, the door opens and her son walks through the door. And the son says, "Sorry, Mum, I met this beautiful girl. We've just been walking around town having a chat." So in that moment, she, even though it's like 30 minutes, she has got, consciously, he didn't die. And it's completed. It's over. But subconsciously, it's too late. She was traumatized. She's created an echo. And I just remember in that session, which was real powerful learning for me, was as we were working through that session, she said he didn't die. She just burst into tears, absolutely sobbing her heart out, but not because she was upset, because she finally got it subconsciously. We allowed her subconscious to complete the event, and he didn't die. Now the trauma's gone. But also the realization, and that's what we're talking about. These events are still current and ongoing until we change them.
So what if he did die? I mean, let's just go hypothetically. Let's say he did die, and so that we can, do you make him not die?
Absolutely not, of course not. No, I will go into detail later. I'm going to give you some case studies with loss.
Okay.
I mean, if looking at this event now, if he had died, what I would have done in that situation was out of that point of trauma, when she's on the phone, maybe she gets a realization that her son died, and say he did actually die that day. I'd have tapped on her, and when we resolved the trauma, I'd have maybe looked at her favourite place in the world, and I'd have brought her son's higher spirit into this higher self, whichever one you call it, whatever you want to call it, into this special place where she could go and communicate with him. And I've done this so often. It's one of the most beautiful parts of Matrix, where you allow it's almost like two souls connecting in a special place. For the client, it's always so real. I mean, to me, it is real.
What's funny, what I think is really nice about, I call that place soul space, whatever you want to call it. And what it's really nice as a practitioner is that I don't do anything. They always talk to each other, and I don't have to say a word. They just,
Absolutely.
It's magic almost, the way they just, the higher selves talk to each other, and it does resolve the trauma. And I really don't do anything but find a good, like you said, a nice place that they go to. So it's a really wonderful part of Matrix.
and just give them time. And
Give them
yeah,
time.
and just one thing, just in case I forget this later, there's this other question that comes up around, how much are we going to get involved when the client's in there talking to their echoes and having conversations and such. Well, just a very simple pre-frame. You tell them what they're going to do next. So, okay, so you'll go to this place, you'll bring his, in this case, his son's higher self into that, his soul, his spirit, into this picture with you. Now, as long as you're okay, I'll give you as long as you need. If you're finished or you need any help, let me know. Otherwise, just carry on. And that way you can sit there, which could be for 10 minutes, doing absolutely nothing at all as a practitioner. But it just allows them the space and time that you keep going in and say, are you done yet? Do you need any help? You okay?
Yeah, two things about that is I do say, if you want to do this out loud, let me know. I would appreciate it because I can facilitate it easier. If you want to do it in silence, that's fine too. I do give them the option. That way I just know what's going on as a practitioner. And the other thing is, one of the hardest things that I get with EFT people who are like trained in EFT and they come to Matrix, they want to help. They want to get in there and say something, and I'm like, and for me, who's a talker, it's really it's obvious that when I just shut up because it's their time and they solve the problem and they're the client.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the things
there are times we need to get involved, we need to help, and there's suggestions to be made and things. But absolutely, the less we do as a practitioner, the better. Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny you're talking about in the UK. I cannot remember the last time somebody did a session out loud. This is a unique experience that you find when you go to America. People like to do it out loud for some reason, but everywhere around the world, everywhere else, people just want to do it in their heads. It's really strange. But I remember a training I did in Santa Fe, maybe if I did 5 demos, I think all 5 people said, "No, just do it out loud. No problem. Do it out loud."
Maybe it's they just like the company, the help, the security. I don't know. It doesn't matter. It's just I kind of like it because it gives me an idea because I can feel when the trauma gets completed. I can feel where they're going with that. And so it helps me facilitate. I don't really do anything about it. It's just, for me, it's good to know.
I think it's just American people tend to be a lot more open. The idea of therapy and having a therapist, and you're so much more open about that. I think in a lot of the world, it's still a dirty little secret you go in for therapy, And I'd love to change that with Matrix Reimprinting. They're not seen as like we're therapists, we're a practitioner. Just that we're there to help you, change those beliefs, to change your lives. It's open to anybody. It doesn't mean you're screwed up because you need help. It just means you're human because everybody on this planet needs this help. So
everybody is not
nice
perfect.
To change that,
Last time I looked, there's not a perfect person completely perfect on the world. Last time I looked. So we all need help, and I do agree with you that, Karl, so much, and I would love for Matrix Reimprinting to help move that along because it's a bit still stubborn over here. It is. And I think but talk therapy is bigger here. So they're used to saying it, chatting about it. And so maybe that's it. But either way, I don't think is important. It's whatever the practitioner and the client, feel most comfortable with.
Absolutely.
You said something.
On similar lines, it's when I train in America, it's like, would anybody like to volunteer? And you get 30 hands up in the air. In the UK, it's almost like you've got to, at gunpoint, get them up to do a demo.
Exactly. And I videotape my demos. You can imagine. So you said something about doctor scare and trauma. What did you want to do? Is there a point you wanted to make about that before we move on?
No, just about the whole idea of the freeze response and being stuck in that moment and being able to move through that. I'll tell you what I did want, just to complete what we're talking about the difference between EFT and Matrix, your analogy.
Yeah, I actually developed it because I had someone who I respected very much, and she's like, EFT, nothing's better than EFT. I'm not even going to try Matrix because there's nothing better than EFT. And I said, I tried to find a way. I even said, Matrix is EFT in the Matrix. Nope, wouldn't have any of it. Not going to imagine, not going to tap on them little, nothing at all. And that's when I came up with EFT is like a movie theater. You go in, you have all these doors and a mansion full of doors of all these things that have happened to you, and you walk in and it's a movie screen, and you sit there and you tap during the movie screen, and it plays until it doesn't bother you anymore, and it's all happy, right? And then Matrix Reimprinting is like a play, where you walk in, and it's an interactive play, so you can stop and walk up on the stage and talk to the person who's having trouble and going, what would you like? And they can talk back. Would you like to make a different ending? Would you like to have mom do something? Let's go tap on mom. What would you like? So it's like an interactive kind of experience. And once she heard that, because she was getting her master's in therapy, and she was like, that would be beneficial. I guess I'm wrong. Okay, I will try matrix reimprinting, and that's what we came up with.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I love it. I've used it so often, and I think it helps people see that difference. That yeah, we can actually go in there and things change. And there's kind of an artificial stance that we don't change memory, but ultimately, these memories do change as soon as you've gone in there and tapped on an echo and allowed them to move through that trauma. What they remember subconsciously, it has changed.
Oh yeah.
Because it'll never be quite the same again. Because in the subconscious, they were stuck there, about to die, and now they move through it. But then, it's being aware of how far we go, what we do, how we change things.
Yeah, we're going to get
and that's what people don't understand. And that's what I want to go into in detail today.
Okay.
So, first of all, we had Bob Scare, and on that great talk he did, and that was life changing. I think for many people who was there that day in Denver those years ago. We had, especially those pure EFTers who, might have not had a background in psychotherapy and talk therapists as such. That whole understanding about the freeze response, how we're traumatized, about when we're powerless, when we can't fight back, when we can't evade, and we just freeze, and how it gets stuck there. But he referred to traumatic memory as an aberration of memory. So first of all, we're on this theme now of what we're talking about. The purpose of our talk today is, what do we change and how far do we go? And people's biggest issue that don't understand Matrix, have not experienced it, they just hear, these people change memories. Okay. Well, first of all, and let's look at this idea. So these memories, Bob Scare calls them an aberration of memory. That false memory, traumatic memory is an aberration. That what you remember in that moment, you're in fight and flight. I'm sure that you've experienced it yourself, Karen, and I have, that when you're in trauma, everything looks different. Everything looks threatening. You misread people's looks on their faces or what they say, the tone of what they say. It's a psychological, physical, psychological.
The heart math says that your blood leaves your prefrontal cortex and goes to your skeletal muscles. So you don't in your thinking brain is in your prefrontal cortex. You can't think.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You can't think.
We have to, we go into our reptilian brain because this is a dangerous situation. We're always talking about the perceptual tiger, aren't we? And this, as Levine always did, Peter Levine with his work. And, when the tiger's there, you don't want to be figuring it out, thinking, well, what shall I do? I could make a weapon here. Maybe I could get the twig and make it sharp. And because it's too late, your throat's been ripped out and you're tiger food.
Yeah.
So you don't want to be thinking, it's just like, okay, do I fight? Right. And every bodily system optimizes to that situation, or you get out of there as quick as possible. Yes, that's the whole thing with fight and flight. So everything needs to look threatening in your environment. So, people's faces and absolutely everything that in your environment, in that moment, you're scanning the environment, it's dangerous, and you misperceive things. So that's what he's referring to by this aberration of memory. And then there's an article which I know you came across with Dr. Karim Nader, which you can explain.
Well, quite quickly, he just says that memories are malleable, and that was not the truth in 2009 when the articles came out. That was not the way of thinking. He says that every time you access a memory, you rewrite it, which means if you can change it, if you can change your perception of it, you will actually change the memory of in your mind. And you can talk to, like, if you grew up in a family and you were kids and you had a bunch of cousins, you can talk to your cousins and it's like, that's not the way I remember it. Right?
Absolutely.
It's because you remember things with your own perception and your own filter. And of course, what's the key is that every time you access it, every time you go back and remember it, you're changing it. So, and that seemed a little dangerous at first, but that's what Karim showed. Now, he hoped to do what we do in matrix reimprinting is, you change the memory so that it's not scary anymore, and you're bringing in Bob Scare's, theories and Levine's theories, and what happens is if you're not afraid of it anymore, you're not afraid of it anymore, and then you bring in, if we change the belief that we learned that day, it's even a step higher. So what you're doing is, in matrix reimprinting, is building on all these, not just theories, but findings. And the nice thing is that, which was what's funny, is like I said, I found out in 2009. We'd been doing that in Matrix for years before then. And Kareem comes out, oh, that's why. And that's what I find in Matrix and reimprinting, is that you do it, you follow the rules, and that's what I want to ask you in a minute is, the guidelines have gotten simpler. I want to ask you about that. And by just following these guidelines, it changes. Miraculous things, seemingly miraculous things happen. And then you find people like Kareem Nader and Dr. Bob Scare, and all these people who are finding out why this works in the first place, which is sort of what happened with EFT too. So
absolutely, yeah. Gary, it was simple with Gary, wasn't it? It was trying everything and just give it a go. Don't know why it works, just try it, and if it works, great. If it doesn't, oh well, maybe we've got to try a bit harder. And it was really simple, wasn't it, in the early days of, which was lovely. And I think it became non-threatening and allowed a lot of people to get involved. But ultimately, we all want to know how and why things work. And especially when we started going to the people like Dawson Church and others that, and our own Dr. Liz Both in the UK, we started doing research papers. We need to know a little bit more.
Yeah, of why this works. Yeah.
Why this works. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So yeah, absolutely. So when people say about changing memories, first thing I'll say is like, well, first of all, these false memories, they're affecting your life every single day by the beliefs and decisions made. That what you remember is not really what happened. And so the choice is yours. Do you want to keep that memory, or would you like to create something more positive in its place? And what we're doing is another point as well is that in these moments of trauma, you experience traumatic events through the creative side of the brain. You said about the way that the blood flow when you go into fight or flight and ultimately freeze. That we experience that in the creative side. So the logic's not in there. So, it's a balance, and that's what we're going to talk about now, is between, creatively completing these events, which is a term, borrowed from Dr. Levine's work and Bob's work, but also, the logical side of it as well. We want to keep it logical enough that the logical mind with the client can say, okay, yeah, I can accept that. I can accept that different belief. I can accept that train of events now. But also, the creative mind has also allowed that trauma to be completed, and it's over and done with. And it's that balance, I think, it's important, and that's what we're.
And that's the gray area. That's and it kind of takes practice to know, to help to recognize in your client what they can accept and not accept, and you can always find that through testing. So if they said, well, I just don't want it not to, I just want it not to happen, that's not the creative side of the brain, how far can we go? So are there any guidelines? What is it big T little t? Is it based on the belief? Is it how can we just make it not happen? What is
okay, so we're going to that. Big T, little t is a big dividing line for myself, which we'll start there, and then we'll go into some little subcategories there. But with this, from our first book, when it tended to be very magical, there was a lot of Narnia, there was a lot of Harry Potter, there was a lot of, what was that place when no, that is Narnia, where you go into the wardrobe, isn't it?
Yes.
And there was angels and fairies and pixies and unicorns and
magic.
A lot of sessions were very magical.
Yeah.
And as I say, in recent years, I really like now to try and keep it more real. Whenever possible, keep it real. Now, there's certain times when, for certain reasons,
I want to repeat that. Whenever possible, keep it as close to the truth as you can. Okay.
Yeah, so keep it close to the truth. Just keep it as real as possible. Keep it as, if you can go into the memory and keep it as close to the original memory as possible, just have that conclusion, completion, and possibly, and ideally, a positive belief from it instead of the negative, and the new positive belief being the direct opposite of the old belief. Then to me, that's the perfect scenario.
That is I think that's important, Karl, because that you say perfect, and nothing's ever perfect, but if you can strive to perfect, like we all want to do, right? That is the perfect scenario, correct?
Absolutely, yeah,
So
and
nothing's ever perfect, but that would be the perfect scenario. And I think that's important that people know, here's what, nothing is ever perfect, but here's what would be, so that we can
yeah,
strive there. So as we go into different levels, I think it makes it clearer that here's what we're striving for. But if you can't, you can't. And, like we always say, everybody's
absolutely.
different.
So in different kinds of, to me, if somebody comes with loss, you deal with it one way. If somebody's coming with a phobia, then we can just, with the phobia, we might make it a bit more surreal, because we're just trying to overcome a fear of something. It doesn't really matter if it's rooted in reality or not. We're just trying to overcome something.
Yeah.
Big T traumas, and we'll talk about that, about going afterwards and such.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, absolutely, down the line I've made mistakes, and it's when you make mistakes as a practitioner that you learn.
Yeah.
And with the training matrix over the years, I've learned, and the great thing about it as well is that you can make a mistake with matrix with a client, and then you think, actually, in hindsight, I'd rather have done something differently. And next week, when they come in, and you can redo it differently.
Thank goodness.
So that's a great. All these memories. There's so many different in this place in the matrix. There's all kinds of different possibilities, as we know. In this place with trauma, past, present, and future all there intermixed at the same time. So we're just trying to find that ideal completion for that client that changes their beliefs and resolves the traumas. So don't, as practitioners, first of all, don't worry if you think at times you get it wrong. Because yes, we do. I'll give you an example. Quite a lot of years ago, there was early Matrix. There was a young man that was on the course. Now he had long hair. He looked quite wild, kind of Jesus-like, in the symbolic Jesus long hair and facial hair and such. And anyway, I worked with him on a demonstration, and it was the first day at school. Now, before we went to school, he'd lived in the woods. His dad was like a gameskeeper, like a stately home in the UK, and his dad looked after all the grounds. And so as a little boy, he just played in the grounds all day, having a wonderful time. Then one day, he's plucked from that environment, put into school, and he just didn't get it, didn't understand it, didn't have any friends there, didn't know, what was going on. So this was actually, talk about a key event. This was this boy's key event, or this man's key event in his life. When we went back to that memory, so this was like 6 or so years ago, what does the echo need right now? And the echo says, I just want to go back to the woods. So it's like, okay, great, back to the woods. Nice picture of him being in the woods, we reimprinted it. And he was like, oh, that's great, that looks better. And then that night I thought, that's wrong, you can't do that.
It's escaping.
He needed to go to school. There's so much now. He wanted to write a book, and there were just so many issues that had arisen from that kind of this key event bomb that had exploded all over the place, and all the sub beliefs about being clever enough and fitting in and belonging and all these things. So it was, I knew I'd made a mistake, and interestingly, about 3 years later, he called me up one day and said, you won't remember me, my name's blah, blah, blah. And I do, and I give him his whole history, and I told him about this session. He said, that's amazing, how do you remember that? He said, like, do you keep records on all of us, or have you got photographic memory? I was very tempted to say yes to both, but I said, no, simply as this, that I made a mistake on that session, and listen, I'd like you to come back on the course, and, let's look at where we're at now with Matrix, and updating, you on the skills. And he did the EFT and Matrix. He came back for 5 days, and virtually every session he did was on that one belief, on that one memory, before he felt happy with that first day at school. Around feeling belonged, that he fitted in. So there's lots of things that did change, but he went to school, and then he felt, he belonged there, he fitted in there. So, that's an example of where I think we can go wrong, but it's not too late. We can also,
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's key. I mean, if people don't, they've walked into your office with the problem, so they have coping skills, whatever that is. And if you don't get it quite right, I'm talking to the newbies and things like, the people who are afraid. Like I have students who are still afraid to use Matrix because they want to get it right. And I keep saying you can't really get it wrong. you know, unless there's somebody with a diagnosed mental illness. That's a whole nother story. You know, they have coping skills. They can deal. And so he went back to the woods. That made him feel good. It's not going to solve the problems, but he felt good. So you know, it's
Absolutely.
not really a mistake. You just didn't finish, right? I mean, that's what I tell the people in
Yeah,
my class.
absolutely. And certainly there was a lot more to do. We didn't make the problem worse. I mean,
Yeah.
for a couple of years he had a little echo that was happy to be in the woods again. But ultimately, it's not going to help him move on and deal with
Exactly.
the problems. And that's fundamental is when the client comes in, what is the problem? What do they want to do? And then, and hence why things will be different and how we deal with Matrix. So just give me an example there of, say somebody comes in with a public speaking fear. So we can follow that energy. We can tune into the fear of public speaking. We can go back to a memory and see we go back to a memory where they're 7 years old and they're in assembly at school and they stood up there and they froze and they got shouted at and everybody laughed at them and they just couldn't do the reading or whatever it was they were supposed to be doing. So in this situation, the client's coming because they've got a phobia of public speaking. So just tapping going afterwards and tapping on the echo, they might change their belief about, okay, I'm useless or whatever it might have been. But it's not going to give them an experience of being able to do the public speaking. So in this situation, I would actually look at going beforehand. I would tap on the echo to get them calm, give them the resources to go up there and calmly be able to give the speech, the talk. And at the end of it, everybody claps and cheers and everybody's really happy with what they've done. Because now you've got a picture in there that says, I can do this. Now, in a long-term perspective, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong in what we've changed there. There's no long-term repercussions.
Would it work? I'm just asking. Would it work? Is it if you get them to go through it when they still mess up and know that they were six, and I mean, and the echo knows that they were six, that they're not laughing at me, and they get through it, and then you future re-imprint them doing it well? Like, so it's instead of the one situation that you would future re-imprint that they speak well because they knew they were only six, or is there a choice there, or
There's always choices, and that's the thing with Matrix we're at now. You mentioned about future work we do, where we'll go into this in length because a lot of our practitioners around the world want to have seen about this work we're doing now, where we can go to our old traumas and get resolution. But then actually, with our understanding we have with Matrix that past, present, future is all intermixed there, that it makes sense that all potentiality is there, so we can ask our echoes to go to a future self. And within that, we can see a future self that's achieved what we want to achieve, and certainly that'd be a great picture to re-imprint on a daily basis to change the fields. But also, if it's something that you failed at many times, especially when we get into the core beliefs that when we've ran them hundreds of times, and which we do with things like I'm unlovable and I'm not good enough, that I think just going to a future self or just changing the trauma or just resolving the trauma is not enough. If you've got 1,000 pictures in your subconscious say I'm unlovable,
right?
then we need to go and have lots of pictures that now say to you, these pictures are the language of the subconscious that I am lovable, and that's the difference. So public speaking, things like with phobias, public speaking being a phobia, the client wants to overcome something. So say if we go to an event like that, and it now just changes. Yes, it's not what happened, but it completed in a positive way. I don't think there's that many negative repercussions, and especially if you think, why is the client coming? And if it's something, as an example, like the client had, say, an abortion. Now, in a situation like that, no, we're not going to go and change that where they didn't have an abortion, but we might be there. You could hold the hand of the 18-year-old or the 19-year-old, however old the younger girl was, that you're there with them through it and you help them deal with the trauma and you help them deal with some of the negative beliefs. Something like that you won't want to change because there's implications there that if you create it so you didn't have the abortion, it's subconsciously like, where's the baby?
Right.
So that's totally wrong. Like you said with death, if somebody died, they died. We're not going to change that. But we need to look at often how strong is the field is a big key part in how much we need to change and how often we need to go to specific memories.
Right.
But we talked about the big divide. It's a generalization, and I think that's as trainers we need to kind of generalize a little bit with our trainees.
Yeah. Well, everything
So
changes. Every client is different, and what they've learned is different, and everybody.
Absolutely.
And so you can't. When we train, we have to give like it's. So here's the perfect, and here's what's right. But even those anybody that's done EFT, do you use the same EFT words with every single client? No, you can't. And I think that's. I know people want what's right in Matrix, but it depends on who's in front of you, right?
Absolutely. And at least with Matrix, so many times you've heard the EFT practitioners say, "Oh, what words do I use?" And it's like you get their clients' words. And the thing about Matrix is all about what the Echo wants and what their clients want. No, it's not just that the Echo wants something and you let them have whatever they want. I mean, as a practitioner, you have to lead them, in the right way. That they don't do things that don't make sense and that are irrational. And you've got to help your client and your Echo to see that. But basically, apart from that, it's what the Echo wants to feel okay about the situation. And so not even so much the client, it's the Echo. Lovely little story on this. I'm not sure if you've heard this, but there was a situation with a client where they were bringing somebody in to help them. And when the practitioner said, "Who would you like to bring in?" the client said, "Can I bring in the Dalai Lama?" And the Echo went, "Who's that? I have no idea who that is." And when said to the Echo, "Who would you like to bring in?" the Echo said, "Can we bring in David Cassidy?" That was irrelevant to that Echo at that age, and so that's how real these Echoes are, of course. Stuck in that moment from that consciousness of in this case, a young girl, 6, 7, 8 years old, who had a big push on David Essex, who was a big heartthrob celebrity pop star at the time. So that divide. So the big divide is big T, small T events, okay, and how we deal with them. So if we look at some of the big T's, Karen thought them in. If so death, mugging, sexual abuse, physical abuse, tsunami, earthquake, terrorist attack, war situations. That could be divorce, medical interventions, medical diagnosis. These are car crashes, accidents. So, what I say by and large, as a generalization with these events, we can go after the event. So after the car crash, after the child's been abused and they sat on the bed feeling all alone, and in pain and hurt and all these negative beliefs, we'd go afterwards. The reason for that is quite simply that if we go before, we're going to do one thing, aren't we? We're going to try to do one thing and actually change the event. Which then, these events happened, they're undeniable, they happened. So if we went before, or if we go in the middle, we're going to try to push the attacker off or stop the car crash, and then we are into denial, and we don't need to do that. The two key things about any traumatic event is one is the trauma we're holding on to, and the second is the belief that we made that day. So we can go afterwards. So, example, it might be a little girl on the bed where she's feeling some bad energy in the body and the trauma. So we tap on the Echo to get rid of that trauma, see what the belief decision made that day